A black woman, posing as poor and carrying an old suitcase, was thrown out of her home by her white adopted son on a frigid night. Penniless. Everyone saw her as a burden, a destitute mother leaning on others for survival. But no one could have guessed that just weeks later, she'd be the one to leave her son's entire family homeless. What secret had she kept hidden for 2 decades? And what's the cost of ingratitude? Should a mother forgive or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This story might make you reflect on your own life. This tale is shared on the channel Soul Beauty. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our latest stories. In a quiet lakeside town, nestled among sprawling cornfields and rolling green hills, lived a woman in a modest home with a shingle roof weathered by time. Her name was Mary. Locals called her Miss Mary, a name spoken with familiarity but a touch of distance. Everyone assumed she was a lonely woman scraping by on a meager pension in her later years. Sometimes folks would spot her pedaling to the farmer's market to pick up a few vegetables, a bag of rice, or a jar of canned fish, then slip back home as if she'd never been there. She kept to herself, didn't join in town festivals, had no ties with neighbors, and it seemed no family ever visited. Kids in town whispered she'd once been a school teacher. Others said she was a retired nurse. Some neighbors, chatting in small groups, claimed Miss Mary was a beauty in her youth and had married a wealthy man in the big city, only to end up alone in this small town at the end of her days. But no one knew the truth, for she never spoke of it. Miss Mary often sat on her front porch in the late afternoon, quietly sipping chamomile tea, her eyes tracing the treetops swaying in the breeze. Some called her a hermit, but to her, this was the peace she needed after a stormy life. 20 years ago, she wasn't the Miss Mary in the plain brown dress she wore now. She was the wife of James Carter, a successful businessman who founded and ran a major real estate firm in Chicago. They lived in a grand penthouse in the heart of the Loop, where the hum of traffic and city lights never faded. They had a son, Caleb, a bright student, well-mannered, and their pride and joy. Her life was once the envy of many. A thriving business, a dutiful son, wealth in abundance, lavish dinner parties, European vacations, and afternoon teas with Chicago's elite women. Then, one October day, a tragic plane crash claimed her husband and son during a business trip, plunging into the Atlantic hours after takeoff. No one survived. A phone call at dawn shattered everything: her family, her future, her life. 2. Mary collapsed. Within a week, the penthouse became a hauntingly empty shell. No more laughter. No more Caleb tugging at her skirt. James no longer sat by the window reading the morning paper. Miss Mary became a shadow of herself. Mourners came to offer condolences, but soon returned to their lives. She couldn't. Grief wasn't in her tears but in the endless void, a bottomless pit. She didn't sell her assets or liquidate her shares. Instead, she quietly handed control to a trusted team that had worked with her husband for years. Her fortune, hundreds of millions in business shares, real estate, savings, and personal assets, was transferred to a trust fund in her name at a major bank. All documents were legal, but she left them untouched. As a silent vow, she abandoned everything and left Chicago that night without a goodbye. She arrived in this small town as a stranger, bought a modest plot with cash, built a simple house, and lived like an ordinary person. Her clothes were hand-sewn. Her phone was an old flip model, its number known to no one, and no one called. She kept only a journal with memories of her husband and son, and an unopened envelope, the last letter Caleb sent from the airport before his flight, which she never had the courage to read. Time passed. Miss Mary lived through each harvest, each rainy season. Mornings, she biked to the market. Afternoons, she tended her vegetable garden. Evenings, she listened to crickets chirping in the distant fields. She was no longer Mrs. Carter, the tycoon's wife. She was just Miss Mary, a woman who chose tranquility after the storm. But one day, an invisible thread pulled her back to life, refusing to let her hide forever. She met the eyes of the past in the form of an abandoned boy in a downpour. The child didn't speak, just shivered, curled up under a maple tree. His soaked eyes clung to her, pleading. In that moment, Miss Mary felt her heart stir, alive again, as it had when she first saw Caleb as a baby. The boy's eyes were weary, but yearning for unconditional love. She brought him home. She didn't need to know his name, his parents, or why he was abandoned. She only knew life was offering her another chance to love, not to preserve a legacy, but to save a life. From that moment, everything changed, not loudly or dramatically, but gently, like a heart learning to beat again after breaking. It was pouring rain that day. Winter winds carried sheets of water that stung faces, making the whole town huddle in the damp cold. Miss Mary had just returned from the market, her thin raincoat clinging to her, her hands trembling on her bike's handlebars. Passing the gate of St. Luke's Church, a small chapel at the town's edge rarely visited, she noticed a small shadow huddled in the wind by the steps, pressed against a stone pillar as if dodging the gusts. At first she thought it was a pile of discarded rags, but as she pedaled past, a slight movement, a weak lift of a body, gripped her heart. She stopped her bike. The rain poured mercilessly. Turning back, she approached the shadow and knelt down. It was a boy, no older than 5, pale, his clothes drenched, hair matted, lips blue from cold. His eyes, wide and half open, were hazy but held a fragile spark of hope, the last flicker of life in his frail frame. "Lord have mercy," Miss Mary whispered. She whipped off her raincoat, wrapped the boy in her arms, held him tight, and raced to the town clinic. All the way, she prayed silently, clutching the child to warm him. She didn't know why he was abandoned at the church gate, or have time to wonder. She only knew one thing: if she didn't act fast, he wouldn't survive. At the clinic, doctors and nurses sprang into action, warming the boy, administering fluids, and doing all they could to save him. Miss Mary waited in the hallway, rainwater soaking her hair, her shirt still damp, but she didn't care. Her heart wasn't filled with curiosity or fear, but a strange urgency, as if she'd nearly lost something precious she'd only just found. The boy survived. The doctor said he had mild respiratory distress from cold and hunger, his body severely malnourished, showing signs of long-term neglect. In the recovery room, he didn't cry or speak, just stared at Miss Mary, never looking away. Days later, no one claimed him. No missing child reports surfaced and no information emerged about his identity. The church confirmed no one had left a child in their care, and security cameras caught nothing in the storm. The boy was truly nameless. Miss Mary made a choice no one expected. She filed for legal adoption, taking full responsibility, signing papers, and verifying her financial stability, all quietly, without fanfare. When the town sheriff asked why, she smiled and said, "I couldn't leave him behind." She named the boy Ethan, hoping he'd live a good life, unlike the bitter roots he'd come from. From that day, Miss Mary's quiet house came alive. The patter of a child's footsteps echoed each morning, a soft cough sounded when the seasons changed, and sometimes giggles rang out at midnight as she told bedtime stories in her warm voice. Ethan spoke little, but his eyes shifted over the years, from timid and fearful to secure and loving. He naturally called Miss Mary Mama without anyone prompting him. She cared for Ethan meticulously, from his meals to his sleep. She biked him to preschool, then elementary, then high school. Each year, she patched his worn backpack, mended his oversized uniforms, and tucked a small lunchbox with a peanut butter sandwich and apple slices into his bag. Ethan never saw Mama cry or heard her scold harshly. But when he fell ill, she stayed up all night by his bedside, watching his every breath. He never knew that in her locked drawer lay documents and bank accounts worth tens of millions, or that she could have sent him to a private academy, but chose to raise him in a simple home filled with boundless love. To outsiders, Miss Mary was a poor woman scraping by. To Ethan, she was his whole world. Once, when his teacher chose him to accept a county award for top student, Ethan glanced at the schoolyard where Miss Mary stood behind a sycamore tree, holding a bouquet of daisies, her eyes brimming with tears. He ran to her, hugging her tightly, ignoring his friend's laughter. "Mama, I'm doing good because of you. You're my mom, right?" Those words left Miss Mary speechless. She held him close. Yes, she thought. For years she hadn't seen him as just a found child. He was part of her, her very breath, Ethan grew strong and obedient, never asking about his birth parents. Perhaps he knew, or perhaps as long as Mama was there, no other questions mattered. An invisible thread bound two lost souls, one who'd lost a son, one who'd had no mother, mending their broken fates with unspoken love. Ethan grew up in that small house in the heart of rural Illinois, with a mossy porch, a trellis of honeysuckle sweetening the air each afternoon, and a woman who wasn't his biological mother but loved him like her own. The boy found on a rainy afternoon was now a tall, kind, studious, and polite young man. Ethan called her Mama with all the gratitude and closeness any child could offer. To Miss Mary, Ethan was an unexpected gift from fate when she thought her world had ended after her husband and son's deaths. She never told Ethan about her past. No one in town knew she'd once lived in a Chicago penthouse, married to a renowned businessman with millions in assets. To everyone, Mama was just an old woman living frugally, selling homemade pies, sewing, and taking odd jobs to raise the boy she'd found at the church gate. Only she knew that under her bed, a safe held her vast fortune, untouched for 20 years. To her, wealth wasn't money. It was peace and true love. When Ethan entered his senior year of high school, Mama began saving every penny from selling. Pies at dawn, mending clothes in the afternoon, and knitting scarves for market vendors at night. Each dollar was sorted into envelopes: tuition, next month's groceries, books, bus fares, Christmas. No one knew she had over $10 million in her bank account. They only saw an old mother, bent under the Midwest sun, bustling at the market from dawn to dusk, skipping breakfast to save for her son. The day Ethan received his acceptance letter to Northwestern University's medical school, Mama slipped to the backyard, sat by the well, and wept. Not from fear of costs, but from overwhelming pride seeing the boy she'd raised from a shivering child become a man. She packed his bags with care, folded clothes, jars of homemade jam, bags of cornbread, escorting him to Chicago for enrollment. Ethan hugged her in the dorm courtyard, her back damp with sweat but carrying the warmth of the sun, and all that was sacred in his life. College life began. Though far from Mama, Ethan called every night, sharing stories of classes, friends, and sometimes sending photos of his lecture halls or latest awards. Mama didn't own a smartphone, so she'd ask the preschool teacher down the street to open the photos for her. She'd smile all day, glowing with pride. She never boasted but cherished every milestone: Ethan's first semester grades, scholarships, or even what he ate that day. To cover tuition, rent, books, and living costs, Mama worked tirelessly. On cold winter nights, she sat under a flickering lamp, stitching orders for delivery the next day. Some nights, exhaustion took over, and she dozed off at the table, head on her sewing machine, hands still clutching needle and thread. But when Ethan's call came, she'd spring up, wipe her face, and answer with a smile. "You eatin'? You warm? Got enough money?" Though she never touched her bank account, it wasn't stubbornness. She believed Ethan needed to learn to grow from honest effort, not handouts. She taught him to live with kindness and gratitude, to value every meal given and, if possible, give back twice as much to the world. Ethan took her words to heart, striving to honor her expectations. Still, he sometimes wondered, why did Mama live so humbly? Why didn't she buy herself new clothes, see a doctor despite her lingering cough, or accept help from anyone? Was her past so painful she couldn't speak of it? These questions lingered through his college years. He vowed that after graduating and landing a job, he'd care for her, let her rest, get proper medical care, and live in a better home than that old shingle-roofed house. But life wasn't as simple as promises. In his final year, a charming, intelligent, and ambitious girl entered his life, soon to be his wife. Mama didn't know that from this moment, everything would veer in a direction no amount of motherly love could stop. When Ethan told Mama he was getting married, she paused for a moment, then smiled softly. "As long as you're happy," she said, though her heart held a mix of joy and unease. The girl Ethan loved was Emily, a white city girl, sharp, beautiful, a graduate of a top business school, working for a multinational firm, fluent in corporate speak, and always poised. Emily was nothing like Mama or the women she knew. From their first meeting, Mama sensed a clear, invisible divide, not just age, but a clash of worldviews. The wedding was held swiftly at a sleek downtown Chicago hotel. Mama sat in the back row, wearing a hand-sewn dress, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. She smiled, but no one noticed the quiet in her eyes. Throughout the reception, Emily greeted her politely before rejoining her friends and family. Mama didn't judge. She told herself modern times bred practical hearts, less tied to sentiment. As long as Ethan was loved, that was enough. But she didn't see the silent shift beginning, growing more apparent each day. After the wedding, Ethan moved to Chicago with Emily. Mama stayed in the countryside. Her small house remained as quiet as ever, only now she waited daily for a call or text checking on her. But calls grew rare, often just rushed words, usually from Emily. "Mama, can you send a bit more this month? We're still paying the mortgage." Or, "Mama, I need dental work. Can you loan us a few thousand? We'll pay you back." Mama said nothing. She'd go to her room, open an old tin box, and pull out bills stashed under the mattress. If needed, she'd withdraw from her savings account, the one she swore not to touch. How could she refuse? Her son needed her. Once she asked softly, "You and Emily have good jobs. Why's money always tight?" Ethan laughed, his eyes dodging hers. "Just married life, Mama. Lots of unexpected costs. Don't worry." But what hurt wasn't the money. It was Emily's curt, "I'm busy" on calls, or Ethan skipping the anniversary of her husband and son's deaths, sending only a text. "Mama works crazy. I'll visit soon." Mama sat by the memorial candles, her hands trembling over a bowl of rice. The flickering light cast shadows, making her feel a stranger in her own home. Once, she visited Ethan and Emily in Chicago, carrying a basket of cornbread, a jar of peach preserves, and fresh apples. She rang the bell for ages before Emily opened the door. Seeing Mama, Emily paused, glanced at the basket, and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you didn't call ahead. I'm cleaning for guests tomorrow. Work folks, just leave the stuff here. I'll drive you to the bus station." Before Mama could sit or sip water, she was ushered out like an uninvited guest. On the way, Emily chatted coolly about stocks and condos, then casually said Mama should stay in the country. "The city's hectic, Mama. You're not used to it. You could get scammed." That day, Mama rode the bus home, clutching her unopened basket, tears falling not from sadness but from realizing Ethan was drifting away. From then on, Ethan called less, and Emily rarely texted. Occasionally, Mama got a message. "Mama, can you loan us some cash?" She sent it, never complaining, but her heart cracked bit by bit. A bad cold left her weak for a week. The early winter chill and nagging back pain signaled her health was fading. Part of her felt emptier than ever. Ethan hadn't visited in months. Calls were now just about money. No warm questions like before. All Mama wanted was to see her son, hear him call her Mama in person even briefly. She decided to visit Chicago, partly to rest after her illness. She didn't call ahead, believing the son she'd raised from an abandoned child to a college graduate would never turn her away. She packed a few clothes in a small suitcase, brought no cash, and left her savings untouched. It was a quiet test. If she had nothing, would Ethan still welcome her? The night bus dropped her at the sleek apartment complex where Ethan and Emily lived. Their unit was on the 12th floor, spacious and modern, a place Ethan had once shown her proudly. She rang the bell. Emily opened the door, her eyes flashing surprise before turning cold. "You didn't call," she said, her tone polite but edged with irritation. Ethan appeared after Emily called him, pausing when he saw Mama, then smiling awkwardly. "Mama, why didn't you tell us you were coming?" Miss Mary smiled warmly, gripping her suitcase. "I've been under the weather." "Son, it's cold back home and I've been coughing. Thought I'd stay a few days to warm up." Emily turned away without a word. Ethan hesitated, then spoke softly, as if hiding his words. "Mama, The place is tight right now. Emily needs rest. She's pregnant. I'm swamped with work. Maybe head back home to recover. Miss Mary stood frozen, her hands whitening on the suitcase handle. She kept her voice steady. If it's tight, I can sleep on the couch. No trouble. Emily stepped forward, arms crossed, firm. Mama, if you care about us, please go home. I need calm right now. I'm stressed. The city's too noisy for you. Her words, light but cutting, stung like a slap. Not for the rejection, but for the coldness from the woman her son chose. Mama walked in silently, sat on the edge of a chair, and said no more. Ethan glanced at Emily, then Mama, his eyes wavering before turning away. As night fell, the upscale apartment grew silent. No one asked if she'd eaten. No one offered a blanket or warm water. Mama sat, clutching her suitcase, staring into space. Memories flooded back. Ethan as a boy, how one cough kept her up all night brewing tea, how she'd rush to him when he fell off his bike, soothing his scrapes for days. Now, frail and needing him, all she asked was a night's shelter. But it was inconvenient. Near midnight, Ethan emerged, phone in hand. Mama, I booked you a cab home. I've got an early shift and can't see you off. Miss Mary rose slowly, nodded and said, All right, son. No tears, no blame. She dragged her suitcase out, legs shaky but steady. Before entering the elevator, she looked back at the son she'd once lived for, her last light, and said softly, Take care of your wife and baby. I'm fine. The cab sped through Chicago's glowing streets. She had no money, not because she was poor, but because she'd chosen to leave everything behind, testing what she meant to those she loved most. After being turned away, Miss Mary didn't return to her hometown. She asked the driver to stop near a Greyhound station, at a cheap motel she'd stayed in when Ethan took his college entrance exams. The room was cramped, walls stained, ceiling fan creaking, but it was enough. She was used to simplicity, needing only a quiet corner to piece together her shattered heart. The next morning, she bought a newspaper and snacks from a corner store, then returned to her room. Checking her phone, she found no messages from Ethan. But there was one from an old friend from her hometown, a janitor at Ethan's apartment complex. It read, Mary heard Emily and Ethan talking to neighbors. They called you a broke, useless old lady, a leech on their family. My heart broke hearing it. Do you know? Miss Mary reread the message, eyes reddening. Despite her strength, having survived life's darkest lows, she never imagined the son she'd given everything for would speak such cruel words. She wasn't angry, just heartbroken. Heartbroken for the years of raising him, the sleepless nights earning his tuition, the silent tears. All for 2 words, useless leech. But worse came a week later. Chatting with a friend who ran a diner near a prime riverfront lot, the friend hesitantly asked, You know about your house back home? Heard Ethan's trying to sell it. Miss Mary froze. Sell it? It's not in his name. How could he? The friend replied, Heard Emily's working on getting the deed transferred. Says they paid to fix it up, and since you're old and in the country you can't manage it, so you gave it to them for investments. Miss Mary went silent, her heart icing over. Every brick of that house was laid with her sweat, built without a cent from Ethan or Emily. Yet they claimed it, plotting to sell it without her consent. In their eyes, the mother who raised Ethan was nothing, not even worth consulting, just a tool for profit. That night, in her rented room, Miss Mary sat by the window under a street lamp's glow. Her face held no anger or sorrow, but a faint, sharp smile like a honed blade. For the first time in 20 years of hiding her truth, she decided it was time to show who the useless mother they scorned really was. She opened her old phone, scrolled her contacts, and found a familiar name. Mr. Thompson, her husband's assistant for nearly 2 decades. Though retired, he'd stayed in touch, calling on holidays with genuine respect. Mary, sister! His voice rang with joy. I need your help, she said. Find me a temporary place in the city. Simple, but enough to start a plan. I'm stepping out, not for revenge, but to show I'm not trash to be tossed. Days later, she moved to a modest apartment in a tidy Chicago alley, furnished and private. She hired a middle-aged man, Marcus, a former security guard for her husband's firm, now her driver and aide for small tasks. She sent him to investigate the rural house's real estate status, check ownership papers, and had a trusted lawyer probe the illegal sale attempt. Mornings, she sat on her third-floor balcony sipping coffee, reading documents calmly like someone seasoned by pain. Her eyes no longer held sadness but sharpness, tinged with hardened resolve. She had a plan, not vengeance, but a wake-up call. In her new apartment, Miss Mary moved carefully. She reviewed all documents tied to her husband's investments, assets, untouched for 20 years, partly to escape the gossip-filled world after losing her family, partly to save for Ethan, the child she saw as life's final gift. But now, seeing the truth of his heart, she knew love couldn't be given endlessly to someone who no longer valued it. If Ethan chose to forget her sacrifices, she wouldn't curse him. She'd let time and his actions teach him a lesson, quiet, unyielding, and just. First, she contacted her husband's lawyer, Mr. Ellis, who'd managed all assets and contracts since the business thrived. After a week, he confirmed everything: properties, investment accounts, gold, stocks, remained in her name. Only the rural house where she'd raised Ethan was put in his name to help him start a business. "Want to transfer it now?" Mr. Ellis asked. Miss Mary replied softly, "Not yet. Keep it quiet." Then she added, "The country house. I want to buy it back at market price. It's mine, built with my hands. Make it legal, clean, no disputes." Mr. Ellis nodded, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "I'll handle it." Within a month, all assets were secured under her name, using a new identity, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks, her alias from her days in her husband's financial operations. Legally, she was now a wealthy widow with over $100 million in assets. No one, including Ethan and Emily, knew the poor woman they'd ousted was behind those figures. As Evelyn Brooks, she visited a quiet, gated community by Lake Michigan, buying a standalone villa with a sprawling garden, koi pond, and top amenities, paying cash. The realtor, unaware of her past, was stunned to see an older black woman step from a new Mercedes, speaking softly, but with authority. Miss Mary moved in with only Marcus, her driver, and a new housekeeper, Lena, hired through an agency. No one knew her history. They thought she was a retiree who'd lived abroad, widowed early, childless, and back to live comfortably. She kept to herself, never flaunted, but her presence commanded respect. All was calm until one day. Miss Mary, with Lena, visited Lakefront Realty to explore a new development. She planned to invest in rental properties, as her husband once did. Lena suggested meeting a project rep. Minutes later, a polished young woman in high heels strode out, her steps clicking on the marble floor. Despite her flawless makeup, Miss Mary knew her instantly. Emily. Emily's eyes flicked to Miss Mary, for a split second, then away. Her face paled briefly, but as a seasoned professional she regained composure and smiled. "Hello, I'm Emily, your project consultant. What kind of property are you looking for?" Miss Mary didn't reply immediately. She slowly removed her sunglasses, set them on the table, and looked straight at her daughter-in-law, calm, not angry but piercing enough to make Emily flinch. "We've met before, haven't we?" Miss Mary asked, her voice gentle. Emily faltered. "Oh, I'm not sure," Miss Mary cut in. "The woman you sent away in the middle of the night with a suitcase and no money." Emily froze, her face white, hands trembling on her folder. She stammered, "Mama, why?" Miss Mary interrupted, her voice cool as ice. "This is business, not home. Here, we talk value, nothing more." Her presence, stepping from a luxury car dressed in tailored elegance seated as a VIP, was a silent rebuke to Emily's arrogance. Emily couldn't face the consultation. She excused herself, leaving an assistant to assist Miss Mary. But that shock was just the start. After their encounter, Emily was rattled, sleepless. and began asking colleagues about Evelyn Brooks, suspecting she was her mother-in-law. All said the same. Ms. Brooks was a wealthy private investor, untouchable, reachable only through lawyers. Emily felt suffocated. If that day was real, she and Ethan had shunned a woman they knew nothing about. The story might have ended there, but fate had other plans. At a high-end realty event in a luxury Chicago hotel, exclusive to VIPs with strict invitations, Emily led a consulting team, aiming to close multi-million-dollar deals. She was mid-presentation when the ballroom doors opened. An older black woman in a simple navy dress, hair neatly pinned, entered with a male assistant and driver trailing. Her quiet authority hushed the room. Security bowed. Staff scrambled to greet her. Emily, gripping the microphone, froze. It was Miss Mary, or rather Mrs. Evelyn Brooks in a guise she'd never fathomed. Pride overpowered Emily's nerves. She stepped forward, blocking Miss Mary with a smug smile. "Well, Ms. Brooks, here for the event? Got an invitation?" Her voice carried, drawing eyes, the word invitation, a jab, implying an outsider couldn't belong among elites. Miss Mary stood still, her gaze sweeping Emily like a stranger. Her assistant handed over a white envelope, a gold-embossed invitation with Evelyn Brooks and the CEO's signature. The project's senior manager rushed over, spotting Miss Mary, and shifted gears, bowing deeply. "Ms. Brooks, we didn't expect you. We've reserved a VIP suite upstairs. This way, please." He turned to Emily, his face stern. "Ms. Emily, who authorized you to address a platinum client like that? Apologize now." Emily had never seen her boss so deferential. Whispers spread. Some recognized Miss Mary as the owner of a new lakefront villa, a key investor in the firm. Then, Miss Mary pulled out her phone, displaying a bank app. The balance read, $127,435,000. She tilted the screen, letting the chandelier light catch it, visible to those nearby. No gloating, no smirk, just a look that silenced anyone who'd called her a useless leech. Emily stepped back, her face blank, lips rigid. She scanned the crowd, once her admirers, now murmuring and mocking. Some gaped, others shook their heads. She knew this wasn't just a fall before her mother-in-law, but a collapse on the stage, where she'd shone. She bowed her head, speechless, and left the event, steps unsteady, heart heavy with shame. Miss Mary didn't pursue or glance back. She toured the project, picked a lakefront penthouse, paid a deposit on the spot, and signed without haggling. In the car home, she sat quietly, her hand resting on her pocket, where she kept an old photo of her, James, and Caleb. Still, she hadn't contacted Ethan. No calls, no texts, not out of hate. She wanted him to see clearly, just as she, a mother cast out, had to face the truth about the son she'd raised. Ethan hadn't heard from Mama since that night. At first, he thought she was mad but would cool off. By the third week, with no contact, unease set in. Returning to the rural house, he found it locked. Neighbors said Miss Mary had vanished weeks ago. No word. Utility bills were prepaid for months, as if she'd planned a long absence. Then rumors reached him. Realty friends mentioned a secretive investor, Evelyn Brooks, dropping millions on projects. Someone noted she resembled his mother. Ethan was skeptical, but troubled. He searched the house, digging through old photos of Mama in her youth, her posture, her eyes matching the woman Emily met at the realty office. The realization hit hard. Could the mother he thought poor never have been? Instead of seeking her humbly, Ethan took a calculated shortcut: social media. One night, he went live on Instagram. Hair messy, eyes red, lips tight as if fighting tears. He spoke shakily. "Hey everyone, I don't know where to turn, so I'm here. I was abandoned by my own mother. Grew up dirt poor. She gave me no love, just criticism. Called me a burden. Now I'm married, and she's gone. No goodbye. No nothing. I don't know if she's alive. I'm hurting." His voice broke, tears welling, his act rivaling a seasoned performer. He continued, "People say my mom's rich, that I'm lucky, but they don't know I ate ramen for weeks while she worked. I never had decent shoes. She never hugged me, never said she loved me. Now she's got money, but turned her back, not giving me a dime. I'm jobless. My wife's pregnant. I don't know how to survive. The tearful plea spread fast. The video went viral, shared endlessly. Some sympathized, others wept. His followers surged by tens of thousands. Comments poured in. What a heartless mother. Rich but lets her son suffer. So cold. Keep going, Ethan. If she doesn't love you, we do. He launched a crowdfunding campaign for his unborn child, raking in hundreds of thousands in days. For the first time, Ethan, found playing the victim, brought easy adoration. Then, one night social media erupted, not for his tears, but for Miss Mary's response. No video, no accusations. She posted a single article with scanned documents detailing 20 years of raising Ethan, hospital bills from his pneumonia at age 3, tuition receipts, pay stubs from her diner shifts, every cent sent to his college dorm. She included his adoption papers captioned simply, "I adopted you not out of duty, but love. Now you lie for money. I can't stay silent." The post was brief, unembellished, but it detonated online. Comments flooded Ethan's video. She raised him, and he says she abandoned him. Medical bills prove she cared. Who nursed him for years? Adoption papers, college paid, and he claims no love? Ungrateful. Donors demanded refunds. Some accused him of fraud. His account was reported en masse, locked for review within days. Ethan called Mama, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to rage or say more. The truth spoke for her. The cost of his betrayal was the world seeing his true face. After Miss Mary's post, the narrative flipped. Ethan was no longer the, abandoned son, but branded a con artist, ungrateful adoptee, sob story hustler. But Miss Mary didn't stop at exposure. She sued. The lawsuit, filed in county court, cited defamation, slander, and profiting from false claims. Her lawyer, Mr. Ellis, presented evidence of Ethan's illegal crowdfunding, using fake accounts to smear her. When Ethan received the summons, he was stunned. Furious, he raced to the rural house where he'd grown up. But shock awaited. The wooden gate was now a sleek electronic one. The nameplate changed. A security guard stepped out. "Who are you? Appointment with the owner?" Ethan stammered. "This is my house. I lived here 20 years. The guard eyed him, shaking his head. "Sorry. This belongs to Evelyn Brooks. No Ethan here." Ethan turned away, realizing Mama had erased him, not just emotionally, but legally, from her life. He had nothing left. The trial came days later. Ethan appeared disheveled, no longer polished, just a man with hollow eyes clinging to fading pride. Miss Mary, as Evelyn Brooks, sat on the plaintiff's side in a simple dark dress, her presence silencing the courtroom. The judge read the charges. Every lie, every dollar scammed, every post slandering her. Evidence piled up. Recordings, screenshots, bank transfers, unedited videos. Ethan's lawyer claimed he was unstable, stressed by Emily's pregnancy and job loss. But Miss Mary stood, looking at her son. Not with anger, but the cold clarity of one whose trust was shattered. "I raised him with my life, needing no one's pity. I didn't ask repayment, but I hoped he wouldn't exploit others' kindness for lies. He didn't just defame me, he betrayed my faith." The court ruled against Ethan. He was ordered to pay damages for her honor, cover legal fees, shut down his social media, and never mention her publicly again. The rural house he'd tried to sell was reclaimed. Ethan got none of her assets. Worse, the massive fines landed him on a credit blacklist. Emily filed for divorce, leaving with their unborn child, texting only, "You chose victimhood over decency. Pay the price." The man once pitied as a poor son became a symbol of betrayal. No one hired him, no one defended him, he had no home. Miss Mary didn't speak to the media post-trial, issuing one statement. "I don't blame my son, but I won't let lies bury the truth. I cut ties to start anew, where love isn't a game." In March, Chicago's Lake Michigan shimmered like molten gold under the sun. A soft breeze rustled willow branches along the shore, casting gentle shadows. In a quiet villa enclave by the lake, Behind ancient oaks and a woven bamboo fence, Miss Mary's home stood serene, like her life after the storm. She woke early, not to an alarm, but to sunlight spilling across her wooden floor, mingling with the aroma of fresh coffee Lena brewed in the kitchen. A new chapter had begun, one of peace, reclaimed dignity, and a heart no longer bound by betrayal.